Unexpected warning. Black Maid reveals shocking truth to Billionaire. His driver is dangerous. Maria wiped her brow as she shoved the mop into the bucket, her thoughts racing to catch up with her heart. Over the last decade, she had become accustomed to the opulence of the Hastings mansion, the capitalist castle of Robert Hastings, billionaire and lord of a world that felt distant from her own. Yet today, an unseen storm brewed beneath the polished surface of their lives. The moment Ken, Robert's new driver, stepped into her world, everything shifted. With his charming smile and affable demeanor, he wrapped the family around his finger. But Maria saw deeper, through the veneer into unsettling shadows that danced just out of sight. It wasn't merely instinct, it was as if a warning bell had rung within her. Ken's casual banter often drifted into odd interrogations about Robert's business, his family, their schedules. Anything personal seemed fair game. Maria confronted unease as she noticed how Robert, oblivious, laughed along. She felt her gut tighten, as if it was warning her. Fury and sorrow twisted inside her as she scrubbed, battling the urge to dismiss her instincts. Here she was, the one who kept their house in order, yet the family seemed unaware of the threat coiling around them, masked by shiny surfaces. Should she confront Robert, the man who saw her wield a feather duster rather than the woman she was? Would her gut feeling about Ken be interpreted just as fear, the paranoia of a woman no more than a maid? As she washed the floor, swirling shadows fought against her hope. Staying silent felt like betrayal, while speaking out felt risky, a dance along the precipice that could lead to the loss of everything she had built her life upon. Before she could examine her thoughts further, she caught snippets of conversation wafting through the open door, the richness of the drawing room echoing through the halls. Robert's laughter blended with Ken's low voice, but a chill ran through Maria's spine as she overheard Ken's tone change, laced with dripping contempt. "Their wealth is a weakness, you know," he had murmured, words slick as oil. Her breath caught in her throat. A weakness? An alarming revelation began to sink in. What did he mean? This man was probing where he shouldn't. Maria's heart raced at the thought of what Ken could do with that kind of knowledge. Just when every second felt like a lifetime, she became aware of the dread swirling within her. Risking her job versus protecting the children she had come to love as if they were their own, an agonizing moral dilemma. The world outside her mind was shifting beneath the heavy tapestry of life inside Hastings Mansion. Was she ready to confront the specter that had entered their lives, a snake draped in charming scales? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Maria wiped the last of the floor's gleam, her thoughts collided violently with the reality she faced. The stakes were rising like the tension spreading through her veins. She imagined Ken whispering secrets to Robert, undermining the very foundation of trust in her home. She felt small yet resolute. This was her breaking point. The isolation of being the unseen guardian gnawed at her, challenging her self-worth and the very identity she had built. Before she could decide on her next step, a sudden crash echoed through the corridor, snapping her attention as dread washed over her. A harsh noise shattered the previously tempered air, freezing her in place. Her pulse quickened, the moment stretching into an agonizing eternity as she turned her hand on the carpet. Would her voice matter? Would it cut through the chaos that had begun? As she took a step toward the source of disturbance, the shadows shifted closer, and her heart drummed with urgency for the truth that lay hidden just beyond reach. Maria's heart raced, fear collided with adrenaline as she approached the door to the drawing room, the crash still echoing ominously in her ears. She could hear the faint murmur of voices below the rising tide of panic. Dread weighed heavily in her chest. It was one thing to feel the concern for her family's safety ripple through her thoughts, but this, the sound of chaos, felt like a catalyst igniting the urgency she had been wrestling with for days. Instinct took over as she pushed the door open, the hinges creaking in protest as she peered inside. The elegance of the room stood in stark contrast to the scene unfolding before her. The lavish furniture was untouched, but Ken was on his knees, rummaging through a stack of papers that littered the ground. Robert stood frozen, shock gracing his features, as if something within him shattered at the sight. "Damn it, Ken! What are you doing?" Robert's voice cracked, a mixture of anger and disbelief. Maria felt herself stepping forward, compelled by the need to understand, yet fear snagged on her conscience like a jagged stone. If she spoke now, would her voice strengthen the rising tension or plunge it into deeper chaos? As she hesitated at the threshold, fragments of her resolve crumbled. This was beyond mere cleaning duties. It was about protection, about standing firm against a looming threat that had wrapped itself around her home like a vine. Ken's eyes flicked toward Maria, an unsettling smile stretching across his face. "Just helping Mr.
Hastings look for some important documents," he said, his tone calm, laced with an insidious charm. Manipulation danced in his gaze. Maria smoothed a strand of hair behind her ear, forcing herself to breathe steadily. She would not let fear cloud her judgment. "The children, are they safe?" she asked, her voice more assertive than she felt. Each word was a step across a chasm of uncertainty. "Safe?" Ken laughed, the sound grating against her nerves. "They're upstairs. Why don't we make sure no one distracts you, huh?" His expression darkened, shifting seamlessly into a predatory mask. As every muscle in her body tightened, Maria fought her instincts to retreat. This was not just a job, it was a duty she had embraced wholeheartedly. She had invested years caring for this family, and in that moment she recognized the power that came with her dedication. "No, Ken, I can handle this. You need to leave." Robert's eyes darted between the two of them, confusion reigniting the tension. "What's going on?" he asked, edging closer to Maria. She could feel the heavy weight of Robert's trust resting on her shoulders. "I don't think Ken is who he claims to be," she said, her voice stronger now, fortified by the urgency of her choices. "He's been asking too many questions, probing too deeply. We need to be cautious." A flicker of realization crossed Robert's face, but was quickly masked by disbelief. "This is absurd," he said, his gaze turning back to Ken, who remained deceptively calm, an enigma beneath his charming facade. Maria stepped forward, the resolve burning within her, igniting her spirit. "It's not absurd, it's a warning." As she locked eyes with Robert, she saw the flicker of doubt merge with budding awareness. She could be the force to shield them from the unseen storm. But just as anticipation coiled around them, Ken stood up, brushing his hands together dismissively. "You people worry too much," he said, but the shatter of his smile could not mask the menace brewing in his tone. "I'm here to protect you, remember?" The air thickened, tension curling in the space between them like smoke, and Maria could sense the trajectory of their lives shifting. This confrontation was only the first step. She had ignited a pivotal moment, one that could unravel everything she had held dear. As Ken stepped toward the door, Maria's breath hitched. What was he planning? Today had already become a battle for their trust, and a war was brewing within the walls of the Hastings mansion. She could feel the pulse of change beating through her, urging her to prepare for whatever came next. "Get out," Robert spat, voice steadying even as he extended an arm protectively toward Maria. The tension ebbed, and a clandestine dance of power began to crystallize. The moment felt like a starting gun being fired, a call to act or perish. Maria realized this was just the beginning, and her path to truly protecting her family had been irreversibly altered.
As she held her breath, aware that this was more than just a domestic concern, the chilling thought surfaced. Was she ready to face the real danger that Ken posed, not just to the Hastings family, but to herself as well? The stakes had never been higher, and Maria's journey into confrontation had only just begun. Maria felt the chill of doubt seep into her resolve as Ken's predatory demeanor overspread the room like an unwelcome fog. Every instinct she had screamed that this was the precipice. She had always been able to navigate the delicate balance of her role within the Hastings household, but this was unlike anything she had faced before. The tension pulsed, thick and palpable. The echo of Robert's protective stance fortified her, yet the mantle of leadership weighed on her with both importance and urgency. "Robert," she began, her voice steadier this time, "we can't wait any longer. We need to do something." "What do you propose?" Robert's voice was terse, his eyes narrowing slightly as he gauged the reality of their circumstances. While once her supervisor, he now seemed almost as vulnerable as a child. Maria swallowed hard, daring to shoulder the responsibility. "We need to investigate further,
Find the truth about Ken before it escalates. His charm is nothing more than a mask. He's here to manipulate, and we cannot let him." The words tumbled out, but within her, a flicker of uncertainty lingered. What if her suspicions were misguided? What if she misread the entire situation? Ken's laughter echoed mockingly. It cut through her thoughts with ruthless precision. "How delightful to see the staff trying to take charge. But I assure you, I am your best ally," he smirked, tilting his head with feigned innocence. Feeling her pulse quicken, Maria took a step forward, grounding herself in that moment. "This isn't about you or your assumptions, Ken. It's about the safety of this family." The fire ignited in her chest, transforming into a resource she never knew she could wield. A surge of courage coursed through her veins, igniting a determination to stand firm against his intimidation. Robert's gaze shifted, now capturing the glimmer of confidence radiating from Maria. "What if you're right?" he breathed, the fortress of distrust beginning to crack. "What if we are in real danger?" "Trust me," Maria encouraged, her tone resolute. "We need a plan. I can use my position to snoop around without raising suspicions. If he's hiding something, I'll find it." A calculating look settled on Robert's face, slowly morphing into a reluctant alliance. "All right," he agreed, though not with wariness. "But we must be careful. If Ken discovers we're onto him—" "I know," she cut him off. "It must be kept quiet. We gather evidence first, then confront. It seems he thinks he's clever. Let's see how clever he truly is while we stay a step ahead." Maria turned the situation in her mind. She wasn't merely a housemaid. She had become a protector.
Empowered by the mantle of responsibility she had hesitated to embrace before, she would uncover the truth. This search for evidence would reveal more than just Ken's intentions. It would unveil Maria's own hidden layers. She was growing into someone capable of challenging danger head-on, and it felt exhilarating, yet terrifying. As Ken started moving toward the door, Maria prepared to shift the energy of the room. "You're leaving?" she inquired, letting the facade of concern bleed into her voice. "Just for a moment," Ken replied, his feigned sincerity betrayed by a glint of something far darker than desire. "I may have some business to attend to. You all stay safe. Wouldn't want anything unfortunate to happen." The unease was suffocating, yet Maria forced herself to maintain eye contact, refusing to allow Ken's taunts to undermine her emerging strength. Once he stepped into the hallway, Maria shifted toward Robert, whispering quickly, "We need to take advantage of this. He might have a file or something in his car. Let me see what I can find while he's distracted." Robert nodded, aligning his thoughts with hers. "I'll keep watch." As they prepared to execute their plan, Maria couldn't shake the sense that each step deeper into this confrontation would widen the fissures in her understanding of herself. The lines between danger and her emerging strength blurred in unexpected ways. The stakes had been raised, and she had to act decisively. With every heartbeat pounding in her ears, she set the course for a confrontation that would push her limits further. Maria knew she was on the cusp of discovering not just the truth about Ken, but also the truth about her own burgeoning strength. Before she could gather her thoughts further, the urgency of their situation surged back. What would they uncover when they dug deeper? What hidden truths lay waiting in Ken's world? The questions whirled in her mind, collateral damage of the commitment she had made. Escape, she realized, was no longer an option. Maria's heart raced as she slipped out of the main doorway and into the corridor, her senses heightened, attuned to every shift in the atmosphere. The rich, polished wood of the Hastings estate's hallways felt alien beneath her feet, as if this space, so familiar yet suddenly foreign, could either cradle her ambitions or swallow her whole. With Robert stationed nearby, she stepped cautiously toward the garage, where Ken had parked his sleek black sedan. Each cautiously measured step felt like a declaration of her new resolve. She was done being a mere observer in this dangerous game. She would understand what lay beneath the surface of Ken's charismatic mask. While her past experiences had shaped her into a diligent housemaid, this new challenge was forging her into something far more complex, an advocate, a fighter for those she had come to care for. Taking a quick, deep breath, Maria positioned herself just outside the garage door, casting a glance towards Robert, who remained vigilant. She felt a spurt of adrenaline, deciding to act on intuition rather than waiting for fate to dictate her next moves. With a slight push, she opened the door and entered the dimly lit space, the aroma of gasoline and leather filling the air.
The car stood before her, dark and sleek, like a predator waiting in the shadows. Maria approached it slowly, her pulse beating in rhythm with her growing determination. She reached for the door handle, heart in her throat, but hesitated. Did she really have the right to invade Ken's privacy in such a tangible way? Each moment held its own weight. Slipping into his world weakened her resolve, yet the stakes demanded it. She had to know what he was hiding. Gathering her courage, she gripped the handle and pulled the door open. Inside, the interior was pristine, but Maria's eyes quickly scanned for any clues. Beneath the driver's seat, partially hidden by the mat, something glimmered. Hope surged as she knelt, her fingers brushing against what felt like a dossier. She pulled it out, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on her shoulders. Before she could investigate further, Maria's ears perked up at the sound of footsteps echoing outside the garage. Panic welled within her. She needed to act fast. With instinct taking over, she slid the file into a compartment in the car and closed the door, springing back into the shadows just in time to see Ken stroll back toward the estate, his expression inscrutable. Tension coiled in her stomach, a relentless reminder that her actions carried consequences. Could she trust Robert to handle the next steps without alerting Ken, or would her recklessness expose them, sending the precarious balance of their attempts tumbling? Quieting her racing thoughts, Maria slipped out of the garage and returned to Robert. "I found something," she whispered, urgency crackling in her voice as she glanced over her shoulder. "But we need to be smart about this. Ken's back." Robert's eyes widened with concern. "What do we do next?" His question ignited a new fire within her, and as she met his gaze, the resolve hardened. "We analyze the contents and figure out exactly what Ken is up to. We can't confront him yet. We need to be patient, discreet." Each word fueled Maria's burgeoning authority, and realization struck her anew. The transformation she had feared was unfolding right before her eyes. She was no longer just a maid. She was poised to challenge a threat head-on. As they prepared to delve into the dossier, a sudden noise reverberated through the hallway. A storm of uncertainty coiled tightly around them, amplifying the stakes of their mission. The moment felt electric, laden with possibilities and perils alike. Would this be the evidence to expose Ken's darker intents, or was it merely the gateway to more danger?
The questions simmering beneath the surface remained unanswered, but Maria felt an urgency building, a sense that she was hurtling forward, spiraling deeper into a conflict she had only begun to understand. With every inch of her being prepared to confront the unknown, she knew one thing: her next moves would define who she ultimately became. The inevitable clash with Ken loomed on the horizon, but first there were secrets waiting to be unveiled, and Maria found herself pulled irrevocably towards the truth. Maria's resolve intensified as she and Robert retreated to the relative safety of the kitchen. Their quiet refuge was now a battlefield where strategy replaced carelessness. She could almost feel the dossier's weight in her pocket, a tangible reminder of her growing stake in this dark game. "Let's find a place to look at it," she urged, glancing around to ensure the coast was clear. Robert nodded appreciatively and led them toward a small utility closet tucked away from the main activity. The magnetic pull of the dossier was irresistible, yet trepidation clawed at her insides. What secrets lay within those pages? As they squeezed into the cramped space, the faint smell of cleaning supplies mingled with the tension thick in the air. With practiced efficiency, Maria pulled out the dossier, and her fingers trembled slightly as she opened it. She quickly scanned the first few pages, filled with intricate diagrams and notes. "What is it?" Robert whispered, concern etched on his face. "I'm not sure yet," Maria replied, her voice barely above a murmur. The diagrams revealed a network she hadn't anticipated. There were names she recognized, stakeholders in the Hastings Empire, and several others she didn't. A chill ran down her spine as connections began to form. This was more than just a personal plot. It was a serious web of deceit extending far beyond her immediate concern. Every additional page brought new depths of horror. There were mentions of money transfers, suspicious meetings, and muted threats cloaked in confusing language. Maria's resolve hardened. This was not a simple case of breaking trust. It was a potential conspiracy that could destroy many lives. But what could she do about it? "Ken is obviously involved in something illegal," Robert said softly, his face pale. "We need to take this to the police." The idea hung in the air, heavy and dangerous. They both knew the potential repercussions, not just for Ken, but for them. "Not yet," Maria replied firmly. "We need more proof. We can't risk it until we know exactly what we're dealing with." She flipped through the pages, her mind racing. Was she really prepared to confront Ken with fragments of a puzzle? The thought terrified her, but more than personal fear, the realization that Ken could pose a threat to others propelled her onward.
The class divide that had always shaped her existence felt like a cage.
yet it also hinted at her potential for freedom if she could wield the truth effectively. "Look at this," Maria exclaimed, pointing to a passage where 2 names were circled. "These 2 are meeting tonight at the Blue Ridge pub. If we can just get closer, overhear something." "Are you suggesting we follow them?" Robert's hesitation was palpable. "It could backfire spectacularly. It might be our only opportunity." Her voice steadied, conviction cascading through her. Maria leaned closer, catching Robert's eye. "We can't let our fears hold us back. If this is what it seems, we owe it to those caught in Ken's web to act." For the first time, Maria could see her own potential reflected in Robert's eyes, a budding collaborator who was starting to grasp the magnitude of their venture. But would he stand by her side should the confrontation escalate? Would he venture into the unknown alongside her? As they shared a quiet moment of resolve, a distant sound, an abrupt car engine revving, echoed outside the estate. Could that be Ken? Robert's voice was low, filled with urgency. Maria's heart raced again, but this time it was laced with adrenaline, mixed with purpose. "We need to move. We don't have much time." They slipped out of the closet and crept through the kitchen, each step feeling like stepping closer to their destiny. As they edged toward the exit, uncertainty fluttered in Maria's chest, but so did an undeniable spark of growth. She was stepping into a world of shadows and risks, and whatever awaited them, she was ready to confront it. But was she prepared to face the truth that her own life might become a pawn in this dangerous game? The thought loomed ominously as they stepped outside, feeling the weight of their choices settle on their shoulders. In that moment, she knew her next challenge awaited at the pub, one that would reveal not just the secrets of Ken's dealings, but perhaps the truth about her own motivations, what she was truly willing to fight for. The neon lights of the Blue Ridge pub flickered like false promises, casting a garish glow on Maria's determined face. Outside, the air was charged with a mix of excitement and dread as they navigated around patrons, spilling cigarette smoke into the crisp night. Maria felt the dossier nestled against her hip, a constant reminder of the stakes involved. "How do we approach this?" Robert asked, peering cautiously through the glass door. "Let's play it cool," Maria replied, scanning the room for familiar faces. "We'll grab a table where we can see everything." They settled into a booth in the far corner, shadows providing a perfect concealment as they positioned themselves strategically. The bar was alive with laughter and clinking glasses, but the undercurrent of urgency rendered it a mere backdrop to the unfolding drama. With each passing moment, anticipation coiled tighter in her chest.
"Those 2, she whispered, nodding toward a pair of men seated at the bar, their laughter unnervingly carefree. "That's them. How do we get close enough?" "Eavesdropping usually requires some level of stealth," Robert replied, his voice tense. Maria could sense his apprehension, the same fears that echoed her own. But she would not let doubt derail her purpose this time, not when lives hung in the balance. Taking a deep breath, Maria straightened her back, her heart pumping. She turned her attention to their targets, noting how they conversed animatedly, oblivious to the shadows creeping closer. She slipped out of the booth. "Stay here. I'll go to the restroom and try to walk past them." "Maria, this is reckless," Robert protested softly, yet the worry in his eyes seemed to fuel her resolve. "Trust me," she urged, fortifying her stance. "I've got this." As she navigated closer, she felt raw determination empower her footsteps. Every moment in the pub felt stretched thin, time almost mocking her as she passed the men, straining to catch fragmented words that felt like personal jabs. She telegraphed confidence despite the whirlwind of anxiety threatening to upend her composure. Yet as she neared the restroom, something caught her ear, words dripping with gravity. "Better not get caught," one man warned, glancing around. "Hastings is in too deep if we mess this up." Maria froze, her instincts sharpening. What was Ken involved in? She stood still for a moment, wrestling with the urge to pivot back to the booth. But that wasn't enough. She needed to get closer, to unveil whatever lurking threat cast a shadow over her life. Gathering her courage, she walked past the bathroom and angled closer, feigning a casual interest in a nearby display of liquor bottles. Eavesdropping became an exhilarating dance as she tossed aside her fears. The truth was within reach, and she wouldn't falter. "The plan is in motion," the second man said, his tone clipped. "Tonight's meeting doesn't just involve us. It's bigger than that. Bigger than Hastings." Shivers cascaded down Maria's spine. She had opened a door to a reality far more profound than she anticipated, a web where Ken was merely a player, not the puppet master. Her mind raced from one calculation to another as she absorbed the implications of their words. This could unravel everything she knew about her boss. A sudden motion caught her peripheral vision. She turned to see Robert sliding discreetly from their booth, his face a mixture of trepidation and determination. "What are you doing?" Maria hissed, tension lacing her words. "Getting closer," he replied, his eyes glinting with a sense of agency.
There was a newfound boldness in him, a willingness to face the unknown in tandem with her. But was that the right choice? The instant she caught his gaze, Maria felt an undeniable pull. He was no longer wary.
In that moment of hesitation, she grappled with a realization. They were not just allies bound by circumstance. They were now entangled in an awakening shared journey, challenging the very constructs that defined them. Just then, the men at the bar rose, their voices fading as they headed toward the back exit. "Robert, we need to follow them now," she breathed. "This could be our only chance." But as they started to move, Maria couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping towards a truth too monumental to grasp, and the weight for the revelation felt heavier than ever. Would they emerge from the darkened alley of secrets with the fortitude to confront the unyielding reality that was coming for them? In that moment, she realized her own personal evolution was pinned against the very fabric of this conspiracy, a tension both thrilling and terrifying. What lay on the other side of those ominous connections taunted her thoughts, leaving her with one stark question. Could their willingness to confront the truth be the strongest weapon they possessed? Maria's heart pounded as she and Robert slipped through the door the men had just exited, a chilling thrill electrifying her senses. Darkness enveloped them, the pull of the unknown urging them onward. The alley stretched before them, a narrow corridor where secrets lingered like the fading smoke of the pub's cigarette haze. "Keep quiet," Maria murmured, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She was stepping into a new realm where her instincts would need to navigate not just her fears, but the unfolding truth. They moved cautiously, shadows weaving around them, and Maria wrestled with the weight of her decisions. What had begun as a simple eavesdrop spiraled into a potent mixture of intrigue and danger. Learning that Ken was part of something larger unsettled her deeply. It redefined everything she thought she knew about her boss and herself. "Did you hear what they said?" Robert asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's bigger than Hastings. What does that even mean?" "Exactly," she replied, gripping her sense of purpose tighter. The question lingered like a specter, but she pushed it aside. The answers lay somewhere ahead. They came to a gap in the brick wall, partially hidden behind a dumpster. Maria's breath hitched as she pressed herself against the cool surface, the weight of the dossier pressing against her side. The cold steel felt grounding against the heat of her rising panic. Peeking around the corner, she caught sight of the men who had clouded her thoughts all evening. They leaned against a van, their voices hushed but urgent, encased by a wall of tension that vibrated through the air. Maria strained to listen, her entire being fixated on their words. "The deal is set," one man said, his jaw clenched. "No turning back once we move forward. Hastings knows too much, and once we're in, we can't afford mistakes."
A shiver descended, her body responding to the unsettling implication of what was being revealed. Hastings, her boss, the man who had guided her career, was intertwined in something dangerous. The determination building within her shifted to a different kind of resolve. A tingling awareness flickered through her. She was not an innocent bystander. She was a player destined to understand her role in this sinister chess game. "Maria," Robert's voice broke through her thoughts, a query masked with concern. "What if we're in over our heads?" She glanced at him, the depths of his uncertainty mirroring her own. "We have to know, Robert. If we walk away now, we'll never understand the truth, and it might come back to haunt us." He nodded, the flicker of bravery in his eyes igniting her spirit. They had come this far together, and there was no pulling back now. As they pressed forward, the men continued discussing details, punctuated by hushed tones and furtive glances. A sense of urgency locked Maria into place. A wave of adrenaline surged. She had been an observer, but now she felt the call to act, to seize the narrative in a way that aligned with her newfound understanding of the stakes. "Can you hear the urgency?" she whispered to Robert. "They're planning something. We can't let them proceed without knowing their endgame." Robert's hesitation softened, replaced by an inherent trust that had blossomed between them. "Then we'll find a way to uncover it," he said, determination lacing each word. But just as their resolve solidified, a piercing sound cut through the alley, the rev of an engine. The men froze, tension rippling through the air. Maria instinctively ducked behind a dumpster, pulling Robert with her. They peered out to see the van shifting into motion, the men preparing to slip inside. Now or never, Maria breathed, weighing the gravity of her choices. It was time to step into the light, confront what lay ahead, and embrace the unknown. They lurked in the shadows,
hearts pounding as they prepared to make their move. This was more than a fight for information. It was a plunge into the very depths of their core values, a reckoning that would define them both. As the van door swung open and the men slid inside, Maria knew they were on the precipice of revelations that would transform their lives, and she was ready to face whatever darkness awaited them. But with that surge of courage, another question loomed larger than ever. Could the truths they unearthed bind them closer, or would it tear them apart as the stakes escalated dangerously? Maria's thoughts raced, and as the van sped away into the night, she felt the weight of the unknown pressing in from all sides. What were they truly entering with each imminent step? Maria's instinct screamed as the van pulled away, a phantom of uncertainty clinging to her thoughts. The brief silence in the alley was deafening, punctuated only by the echoes of her quickening breath.
This was it. They had crossed an invisible line into a realm of dark intrigue, and every instinct urged her to run, yet her feet remained anchored. "Did we miss our chance?" Robert whispered, tension fraying his voice. He scanned the dimly lit street, his eyes darting back to where the van had been parked moments before. "No," Maria replied, straightening her back, the steel determination settling in her core. "We haven't missed anything yet. We need to follow them." The world around her felt swallowed by shadows as they took the first hesitant step into the night, driven by a newfound resolve. With each stride, a part of Maria was forging an identity uncharted and rebellious, one that was no longer content with passivity. As they rounded the corner, she could feel the pulse of purpose meld into her every thought. Her previous life of routine and expectation seemed a distant memory, washed away by this adrenaline-fueled plunge into the unknown. The urgency to uncover the truth burned brightly, filling her with a mix of fear and fierce determination. She had spent too much time being the dutiful employee, tucked away and compliant. Now, every ounce of that past felt unshackled, pushing her to confront not just them, but what she was capable of. She and Robert found a tucked-away spot behind a cluster of refuse bins, and though every fiber of her being demanded action, Maria knew patience was crucial. They crouched low, the sounds of night enveloping them. The whirl of the city felt almost surreal, distant sirens, the night breeze rustling through the leaves. She scanned the street, her mind feverishly piecing together angles and motives, just as she would do in her professional realm back at work, but now it was life or death. "I can't believe we're doing this," Robert said, shaking his head slowly, though a sliver of fascination peeked through the doubt. "Neither can I," Maria admitted, her pulse racing. "But can you see the opportunity? Understanding this could change everything for us, our careers, our lives, if we expose whatever this is." His eyes flickered, grappling with the fact that they were on the brink of something much bigger than either of them had anticipated. There lay an unfathomable chasm between their old lives and this new atmosphere thick with intrigue, and Maria craved clarity more than ever. What if we uncover something we weren't prepared for, something that sends us down a rabbit hole we can't crawl out from? Robert's concern was palpable, but Maria sensed an undercurrent of excitement in his voice, a hunger mirroring her own. "Then we face it, together," she declared, the weight of her voice grounding them both. "This isn't just about us anymore. It's about the integrity of everything we stand for. If Hastings is involved, we can't just look away." With a firm nod, Robert appeared ready to embrace the storm ahead, and Maria felt a wave of gratitude wash over her.
Whatever dangers lurked, she knew they had not just each other, but a purpose worth fighting for. The passion she once thought defined her only in her career now ignited within her spirit, flexing new muscles of bravery. Suddenly, she caught movement from a distance. The van reappeared, dark and foreboding, but this time its doors flew open and the men exited, urgency clear in their movements. A spotlight in the burgeoning darkness of her circumstances, Maria knew this was the moment they had prepared for. She needed answers, and she couldn't let fear overshadow the chance for discovery. "We go now," she whispered, her voice laced with determination as a plan ignited in her mind. They would have to split up, her stealth and insight against their impending confrontation. Risking everything was no longer merely an option, it was a necessity. With a parting nod, they slipped into the night, each step brimming with anticipation. The air was thick with tension, every shadow a potential ally or foe. Would she outsmart the game laid before her? Could she unravel the threads binding her fate to Hastings and this mysterious danger? The answer lurked just beyond her reach, but Maria was prepared to confront it head-on. The evening was far from over, and as adrenaline coursed through her veins, she felt a predatory thrill, a hunt in progress.
What awaited them down that winding path of secrets and lies would test every principle she held dear and challenge everything she believed was true about herself. The shadows tightened around Maria as she slipped deeper into the urban maze, pulse racing with an intoxicating mix of fear and fierce anticipation. The world she'd known was fading, her meticulous routines, the cushioned safety of her desk job, replaced by adrenaline and danger. Each breath she took felt like a declaration of her resolve. She would not be that passive observer any longer. She was stepping boldly onto the stage of her own narrative. With Robert's retreating form behind her, the night felt almost alive, the air electric with the possibilities of what lay ahead. She adjusted her approach, mentally preparing for every scenario that could unfold. Stealth was paramount. She had to become the shadows, as invisible and unpredictable as the secrets they were chasing. Maria halted briefly, listening intently. The distant sounds of the city became whispers, the voices of her doubts quieted as her instincts sharpened. This was not just a mission, it was a test of her character, her intelligence. Everything she had believed made her competent in the corporate world. Here, theory and practice clashed, and Maria sensed an inner strength she had previously underestimated. With calculated steps, she maneuvered around bustling streets, peering around corners cautiously. She spotted the van parked a few blocks ahead, the men now standing in a tight huddle, speaking in urgent tones.
Their body language radiated unease, a stark contrast to the confidence she had witnessed earlier. Perhaps she could glean crucial information, something that would aid them in their quest and allow her to solidify her newfound identity as a risk-taker. She crouched behind a massive dumpster, adrenaline spurring her on, but tempered by a need for caution. What if they noticed her? What if they were armed or dangerous? Those questions ricocheted in her mind, yet she resisted the urge to turn back. This was the crucible for her transformation, the moment she had to decide what kind of person she was willing to become. Suddenly, one of the figures moved slightly apart from the huddle, glancing around as though sensing an invisible threat. Maria's heart raced. She scrutinized his features, memorizing every detail she could. His dark hair, the way a faded tattoo peeked from beneath his sleeve, his anxious movements. Was he the connection to Hastings? Then a voice broke through her thoughts, low and conspiratorial. "We can't risk being discovered. If Hastings finds out we talked." The name struck her like a lightning bolt, flooding her with a sense of urgency. Hastings. He had loomed large in her professional life, embodying authority and doubt, and yet it seemed their secrets were interwoven with shadows deeper than she'd anticipated. Realization dawned. They were onto something that went far beyond mere corporate rivalry. If she could extract the right information, she could solidify her position, not just at work, but in her life. Clenching her fists, she resolved to act. It was time to confront her fears directly. Gathering her breath, she reached for the voice recorder in her pocket, a remnant of her training as a researcher. Perhaps she could record their conversation, extract information that would unravel Hastings' machinations. Could she capture the exchange before disappearing into the night again? Just as she initiated the recording, a sudden clang echoed nearby, a threshold crossed. The group moved instinctively, their heads whipping around towards the sound. Maria froze, breath catching in her throat. She had secured a lifeline, but the price of discovery loomed larger than she'd anticipated. The tension thickened, coiling around her like a tightening noose. This was her moment, but every instinct screamed for her to remain hidden, the weight of stakes higher than she'd comprehended. What would she do if they realized she was there? What if this gamble cost her not just the opportunity, but everything she was building towards? Determined, she pressed herself against the cool steel of the dumpster, thoughts racing towards the unpredictable. Could she really outmaneuver them, unveil the secrets that entwined her fate with Hastings? With a surge of courage, she prepared to emerge from her hiding spot. The confrontation loomed, but the question echoed louder than ever. What sacrifice would be required to seize the truth?
As she stepped into the unknown, the veils of her former life unspooled behind her, leaving nothing but the thrilling void ahead. The race against time was about to unfold, and she couldn't shake the feeling that unknown dangers awaited her around the corner, both from the men and within herself. What further truths or perils lay hidden just beneath the surface, waiting to be unveiled? Maria's heart hammered in her chest as she stepped from her hiding spot, adrenaline sharpening her senses to a point. She could hear the murmurs of the men growing louder, punctuated by uneasy laughter and tense glances. This was not just a conversation. It was the culmination of everything that had brought her to this moment. No longer a bystander, she was becoming an active participant in a story that was far richer and more perilous than she could have ever imagined. She
She took a deep breath, embracing the thrill of confrontation. She felt more alive than she had in years, and the knowledge that she could navigate the complexities of danger sparked an unyielding desire to uncover the truth. As she drew closer, she could pick up snippets of their conversation, half-formed ideas about plans, betrayals, and names that sent chills down her spine. It was a network of deception, and at its core was something potentially catastrophic linked to Robert Hastings. Pushing her fears aside, Maria nestled against the wall, her recorder ready to capture every revealing phrase. An odd blend of fear and empowerment surged through her as she settled into her role as an unwitting investigator. If she could just catch a glimpse of the truth, she could expose Ken for the threat he truly was. The men's words grew sharper, and she focused intently, willing any sound from them to come into focus. "After tonight, Hastings won't know what hit him," one of them said, a gleam of malice in his eyes. Maria's breath caught. This was bigger than what she had first thought, more than just about Ken manipulating Robert or the family. Whatever deal they were hatching had the potential to upend entire lives, including her own, but she was ready to stand firm. As the conversation continued, she picked up pieces of information that allowed her mind to weave a narrative of deception. The plans for distribution, illegal dealings, and threats that echoed with implications. It was everything that had been circling around her in vague guesses brought to startling clarity. Then, just as things seemed to coalesce, a sudden noise jolted her. The back door of the van swung open, and Ken stepped out, his demeanor shifting from charming to sinister in an instant. "What's going on here?" he barked, scanning the dark corners like a predator. The men stiffened, anxiety rippling through them, but Maria's instincts kicked in. She ducked deeper into the shadows, heart racing. This was the moment all her preparations had led her to. The confrontation she had feared was now inevitable.
She had to push through this fear and stand strong against the manipulation she had seen unravel in front of her. In that tense silence, Maria realized that her role had shifted. She was no longer merely hunting for pieces of evidence. She was becoming part of an intricate masquerade, a scheme that challenged her very beliefs about herself and what she wanted to be in this world. Years of cleaning, observing, adapting had prepared her for this moment, molding her into someone who could manipulate circumstances rather than just accepting them. With her pulse pounding in her ears, she whispered into the recorder, capturing the tense dialogue unfolding before her. "This is bigger than we anticipated," Ken said, a hard edge in his voice. "I want to sever ties with Hastings tonight. We can't afford to wait any longer." The weight of that statement crushed her chest. This could lead to consequences beyond her comprehension. If they were to sever ties with Robert, it would surely create chaos she had to prevent. She was ready to take the lead, ready to confront this storm head-on. Just as that thought crystallized, the men began to argue amongst themselves, unintentionally drawing her attention back to their intricate dynamics and shifting allegiances. This was golden information, the kind of evidence that could expose everything. Maria felt the shift in the atmosphere. The moment was now. She had learned how to manipulate the narrative, even as she felt manipulated by it. She had spent years on the sidelines, but no longer. Anchored in this revelation, she pushed forward, stepping out of the shadows towards the open door of the van. "Is this what you're planning?" she called out, her voice cutting through the air like a knife, filled with authority she had never wielded before. Every head turned to meet her gaze, shock evident in their eyes. Ken's expression darkened, but Maria held her ground, a fierce sense of purpose overriding the crippling fear that had previously paralyzed her. "Maria?" Ken shot back, incredulous, but she sensed something shifting in the atmosphere. The power dynamic was wavering. "What you're doing is wrong," she asserted, stepping closer, strength building with every word. "I will not allow you to hurt people I care about for your own gain." The men exchanged confused glances, their bravado faltering as they realized she was not merely a maid standing in their way. She was empowered now, unflinching, and ready to expose their dirty dealings. "I'm not afraid of you," she announced, eyes locked on Ken, challenging him with a conviction she'd forged through pain and perseverance. And as the scene unfolded, she felt a current of confidence surge through her, a recognition of her own transformative journey. From cautious housemaid to courageous protector, she had grown into someone capable of confrontational strength.
"Get out of my way," she warned, a flash of defiance hardening her resolve, "or face the consequences of your actions." Each word bore the weight of every step she'd taken to reach this point, and she felt the steady pulse of determination reaffirming her identity. Ken opened his mouth to retort,
but her presence had transformed the room. Would they underestimate her commitment to protect the Hastings dynasty she had once sworn fidelity to? She was prepared to unravel the very fabric of their conspiracy and assert her rightful place as a guardian, not just for the family, but for herself. This confrontation would echo far beyond this moment, launching her into an entirely new chapter of her life. She was no longer just a spectator. She was the protagonist, driven by a newfound courage that neither they nor Robert could take away from her. As the tension in the air thickened and the night stretched before them, Maria knew this was her genesis, a definitive shift from merely surviving in the shadows to stepping into the light of her own empowering story. And it was only just beginning. Maria took a deep breath, preparing for whatever came next. She had arrived at a profound crossroads, and the truth she would uncover would either confirm her growth or challenge her further. But one thing was clear. She would no longer settle for less. She would own her place in this narrative and fight until the bitter end. Now more than ever, she realized her journey was not just about protecting the Hastings. It was about reclaiming her own narrative, one that no longer revolved around fear, but conviction. This was her moment, and she was ready to embrace it. Now, dear viewers, this is the moment to take action. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss any of the next exclusive emotional stories that explore personal growth and transformation. Leave a like now to help push this content to others who need to see it too. Your support makes a huge difference. Comment with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion. What do you think Maria will face next? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this powerful conclusion. Help keep the flame of change and personal overcoming alive. Let's grow together.